Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Archana Solanki and here are the headlines we're tracking this hour. Sensex and Nifty declined for the sixth day in a row, losing over 2% just this week. Over 8 lakh crore rupees in investor wealth wiped out in the last 6 sessions. All sectoral indices declined this week. No respite for Adani stocks as the group loses over 21,000 crore rupees in market cap today. More than 12 lakh crore rupees wiped out in a month. Supreme Court refuses to gag the media from reporting on the Adani Hindenburg saga. After a surge during the pandemic, retail investors look beyond equities. Data shows National Stock Exchange has lost 38 lakh clients in the last 6 months. Daily average turnover in February is down 38% compared to last year. Zerodha's Nitin Kamath says new users have dropped and the company is finding it hard to generate revenue. National Company Tribunal stays insolvency proceedings against Z Entertainment, issues notice to IndusInd Bank, who had filed the insolvency plea. Z argues that they were the corporate guarantor for only a tranche of interest repayment facility on Citi's debt. Prime Minister Modi flags the risk to global growth due to high levels of debt in emerging economies at the G20 finance ministers meet in Bengaluru. Says trust in international financial institutions has eroded and calls on world leaders to bring back stability to global growth. Ukraine braces for possible fresh attacks as the Russian invasion completes a year. Zelensky tweets that 2023 will be the year of their victory. The United Nations General Assembly passes a resolution demanding Moscow withdraw its troops from Ukraine. China calls for a political settlement to end the war. Former MasterCard CEO and Indian-American Ajay Banga nominated by the US to lead the World Bank. US President Joe Biden says Banga is uniquely equipped to lead the bank at its critical moment. Supreme Court refuses to hear a PIL seeking menstrual leaves for female students and working women. Says the matter fell within the domain of policy. CGI says that if employers were compelled to grant menstrual leave, it may disincentivize them from hiring women at all. The court suggests that the petitioner approach the Ministry of Women and Child Development.
They only need encouragement and empowered to carry the business forward, because it is only ease of governance. Oh my God, the sky is the limit here.
Real estate tycoon KP Singh shares his blueprint for making India an infra powerhouse. Highlights that the government acquiring land and auctioning it out to private sector for development of townships. Right, let's start with the market action. Sensex and Nifty declined for the 6th straight day, even though the losses today were limited. Nonetheless, both major indices have lost 2.5% this week, erasing all the gains made in the previous 3 weeks. All in all, nearly 8.5 lakh crore rupees in investor wealth wiped out in the last 6 trading sessions. After a surge in retail participation during COVID, data shows investors are now looking beyond equities. National Stock Exchange has lost 38 lakh clients in the last 6 months. The daily average turnover in February is down 38% compared to last year's. Now, Zerodha's Nitin Kamath says that new users have dropped and the company is finding it hard to generate revenue.
Even in broking, I think I somehow feel that we've kind of hit a plateau. Because the new user growth has dropped, the existing users aren't really, adding more as such. So I think the big challenge is that while India is a large country, we're still a poor country, and the real problem to solve in this country is to kind of, get rich inclusively, get a lot more Indians, to a position where they can actually spend money.
Right, moving on, no respite for Adani stocks as they continue to fall and the group's market capitalization is now closer to 7 lakh crore rupees. It's exactly 1 month since the Hindenburg report raised several red flags, and since then, the stocks have taken a beating. 7 out of the 10 stocks ended in the red, losing more than 21,000 crore rupees in market capitalization. The group's value currently stands at just over 7 lakh crore rupees. Since the Hindenburg report was released, it has lost more than 12 lakh crore rupees in market cap. The Supreme Court today refused to gag the media from reporting on the Adani Hindenburg saga. A bench headed by the Chief Justice said it will not restrain the media. These comments were issued after advocate ML Sharma mentioned his plea seeking an injunction on media from reporting the case for listing and hearing by the apex court. And the big corporate story is coming in from the Zee Entertainment. Now, the big breather for Zee Entertainment after National Company Law Appellate has stayed the insolvency proceedings against the media company. The NCLAT has also issued a notice to IndusInd Bank on the plea filed by Zee Entertainment. The tribunal is set to hear the matter again on 29th of March. Ashmit Kumar joins us with the court action. Ashmit, over to you.
Indeed, for now, the relief is interim in nature. Let's keep in mind that on 22nd of February is when the NCLT had directed for initiation of insolvency proceedings against Zee as well as Citi. Now, what's important is that Puneet Goenka moved the NCLT. In fact, the arguments were heard today. The arguments that had been put forth by Zee essentially rested on two grounds. Number one is that Zee argued before the NCLT that, look, as far as the corporate guarantor aspect is concerned, Zee is a corporate guarantor not for the entire debt amount that has been taken on by Citi, but in fact only to the limited extent of tranche payments that have to be made for interest repayment. And that is the first leg of the argument. The second leg of the argument is, and this Zee argued, is a violation of principles of natural justice, which basically leads on to say that Zee was not allowed a hearing before the NCLT had directed for insolvency proceedings, that arguments were not heard, there was not a fair hearing, Zee could not defend itself, could not make its submissions before the NCLT. And this second argument appears to have struck a chord with the appellate tribunal, the NCLT holding that at no point did Zee forfeit its right to argue, to make its submissions, and that is an aspect that is bearing on the mind of the appellate tribunal, even as it stays the NCLT order. So that is very clear. The NCLT order directing for insolvency proceedings against Zee has now been stayed by the appellate tribunal. Notice has been issued to IndusInd Bank. And thirdly, this case will come up for hearing on March 29th. Now, importantly, IndusInd Bank, there are two aspects here. IndusInd Bank had asked for some form of deposit against this loan amount. That prayer has been refused. The second aspect that we'll have to watch more closely is whether or not IndusInd Bank takes the legal remedy of appealing against the stay order before the apex court. If this fight travels there, again, all bets are off. It could be more pain in store for Zee, but that's, of course, for a later date, depending on whether or not IndusInd chooses to move the top court. But for now, certain relief coming in for Zee. That big concern on the insolvency proceedings being stayed by the appellate tribunal. Back to you.
All right, moving on, emerging nations' debt vulnerabilities and the Russia-Ukraine war are expected to feature prominently on the agenda as the first key event under India's G20 presidency kicks off in Bengaluru. Finance ministers and central bank governors from G20 nations and top executives of leading international financial institutions have all gathered to brainstorm on the roles of multilateral development banks, climate financing and debt situation, among others. Prime Minister Narendra Modi called on nations to address risks to global growth due to high levels of debt in emerging economies. Ritu Singh spoke to Nandan Nilekani, who's the co-chair of the G20's task force on digital infra. Take a look.
As the architect of India's digital revolution, and the digital public infrastructure very much has been the center of the focus here at G20. If I may ask you, in your participation so far, what have been the key highlights on that front?
Well, my role here is because I'm the co-chair of the G20 Digital Transformation Task Force along with Mr. Amitabh Kant. And today, here we had yesterday a panel discussion with leaders like Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji and IMF Chairman MD Ms. Georgieva, and the Governor of the Central Bank of Brazil, the head of the BIS, and the Finance Minister of Indonesia, Sri Mulyani. So we had a panel discussion and we talked about DPI. It was an excellent discussion and everybody has a very thorough and sophisticated understanding of what is possible. And I think really everybody here has appreciated India's progress.
While everybody's been appreciating India's progress, India's also tying up with a lot of countries when it comes to sharing their digital public infrastructure, and we've seen that happen through UPI. Just recently we had Singapore and PayNow's tie-up. What's next in the pipeline? What kind of leadership could India provide on this front?
Well, I think I don't know about the specific tie-ups happening, but broadly the way to think about it is NPCI, where I'm an advisor on innovation, has set up something called NPCI Global, and they're trying to take UPI global. And there are three ways you can take it global. One is you can do cross-border remittance. So the example of India-Singapore is cross-border. So an Indian working on an oil rig in Singapore can send money in real time to his family in a small town in India. The second is acceptance networks, where I, with my UPI, go abroad and I can pay in a mall. And I believe that in Dubai already, in like the Lulu Mall, you can actually pay using UPI. So that's acceptance, like my credit card working elsewhere. The third big one is if countries will take UPI as their core payment infrastructure. That, you know, I don't know what's happening there. I mean, I'm not the person, but yes, broadly these are three directions.
Well, you know, that is as far as UPI is concerned. But, you know, in terms of payments itself, India's leapfrogged thanks to UPI and also because of the technology we've been using. Was there any discussion at G20 with regards to collaboration, with regards to, you know, more learnings from India that can be shared?
See, I'm not in the, you know, the inner discussions of the G20. I'm here just to present on DPI. And I can say that that presentation went very well. I mean, that seminar went very well. And there was deep appreciation of India's strategic investment in DPI.
Welcome back. You're watching Business 360. Now, Telangana is playing host to the BioAsia Summit for the year. The state government has set a target of $250 billion by 2030 to boost the life sciences ecosystem in the state. Shireen Bhan caught up with K.T. Rama Rao, Industries Minister of Telangana, and began by asking him about the importance of the BioAsia Summit and how this could put Indian pharma companies on the global map.
Hyderabad, Telangana, and the life sciences story here is something that the world has not really discovered, is what I would like to believe, because the strengths of the life sciences industry here in Telangana is something truly astounding. We produce 1/3 of global vaccines from Telangana, global vaccines, right? We have the largest number of US FDA approved manufacturing facility for a single province in the world, 214. The second largest is in New Jersey. We are home also to Asia's largest stent manufacturing facility, and our life sciences ecosystem is currently valued at almost $80 billion. Now, our ambition is to make it triple the size of it by 2030. $250 billion ecosystem is what we're trying to build by combining and, of course, consolidating our strengths and combining newer elements, you know, moving up the value chain, focusing on innovation, bringing in the cutting-edge intersection point of technology and biology. There are some amazing stories that are coming out of Hyderabad, especially in this place, in this sector, which I think are possibly, which can be benchmarked as the best in the world. Novartis, for instance, does digital drug discovery from Hyderabad with about 9,000 people. This is their second largest center in the world outside of Basel. Yesterday, in fact, BMS, because you asked about investments, Bristol Myers Squibb has announced a center in Hyderabad with $100 million investment. Today, we are making a few more and look forward to many more in days to come to reach that $250 billion ecosystem.
By 2030, that is the target that you've set for yourself. But, you know, you talked about Novartis, and in a conversation with the global CEO of Novartis, Vas Narasimhan, he believes that India is at an inflection point and it must make the transition from a generics hub now to an innovative player. And you just talked about being able to play in that intersection. What is the role that the government can play to facilitate or enable that transition?
When you talk to any large pharma major, they'll tell you that they're worried about IP. They're worried about the regulatory data framework that needs to be in place to protect, you know, any you know, original innovation happening from India, without, you know, without being copied or without being completely, you know, without all their efforts being kind of transgressed. So that's the first big concern that I've heard over and over when I speak to them. The second thing, of course, is we need to also understand as governments that we have to stop obsessing, and you know, we have called ourselves the pharmacy of the world long enough. I think now you realize that volume is not what matters, but value is what really matters. So as you move up that value chain, you need to incentivize. And I've made this case to Piyush Goyal, I've made this case to government in Delhi, but unfortunately they've taken out all the incentives that there are with respect to research and development for any pharma company or biotech company in India. That needs to be put back in place, and governments can actually act as enablers. And more importantly, as we all know, research is the bedrock of innovation. So if you really want innovative products, Shireen, it's unfortunate that in the last several decades, not a single original molecule has come from India, which is really, really sad. So unless you focus on innovation, starting from college level, starting from university level, and start building it into your overall program, I don't think you'll see many original innovative products coming up in this sector in India. We have done enough of quantity. Now is the time to focus on quality.
You know, you talked about the move from volume to value. You also talked about R&D incentives, and yes, this has been a long-standing demand of industry. But what can you at the state level do to encourage more R&D, to also encourage something else that you just spoke about, fostering a deeper, more robust partnership between academia and industry?
We're doing two things in Telangana. First thing we're doing is, in fact, this whole focus on innovation. So we are building what is called as a B-Hub, a Biopharma Hub, where we are going to encourage a lot of youngsters. In fact, even in BioAsia,
B-Hub, V-Hub,
B-Hub, and we are also launching a Y-Hub.
What is a Y-Hub?
With UNICEF, in fact, we are focused on kids and youngsters, and we want to catch them young. So UNICEF and Government of Telangana have partnered. We announced it today. Now B-Hub, which is the Biopharma Hub, my focus is, in fact, even in BioAsia this year, we have conducted an innovative challenge wherein 400 plus startups have come in. A jury is here, and they have shortlisted 75, out of which, again, 5 startups are going to be pitching at the valedictory session tomorrow.
Okay.
And I wish you could attend it and possibly capture it as well. But the point is, the more focus we bring on innovative, young minds that we have in India, I think the more chances that you will actually be able to crack this value piece. Now, what can you do as a government? Be an enabler by providing infrastructure. Be an enabler in terms of policy, and most importantly, by way of providing funding support. Now, the venture capital arm of Novartis, this morning I was talking to Vas, so I was making a pitch to him saying, I think you need to bring in, Fiona is the lady who runs it. I said, you have to bring her in. You have to actually start showcasing the opportunities that exist among the youngsters, young companies here. He was very kicked. So as long as we are able to get that deal flow happen, as long as we are able to give them the comfort that IP they would create would be safe, and most importantly, as long as you create these young minds to start innovating, as long as you encourage them to start innovating, I think we'll be in good stead.
Let me move away from the R&D piece to talk about the manufacturing piece as well. You talked about investments that are coming in on the R&D side, and I think that is a story that is continuing to be amplified, and there is momentum building there. But what about the manufacturing side? Are there any new investments, any incremental investments that you are expecting to close?
In fact, we are almost on the verge of launching the world's single largest pharma cluster called as Hyderabad Pharma City. Now, it was caught up in some court cases with respect to land acquisition. Now, the final hearing is done. Hopefully, I'm hoping, keeping my fingers crossed, hoping that it will be in our favor. Assuming it's done, I already have a list of investors who are wanting to invest the total ecosystem value would be $8 billion.
Okay.
And this, in 14,000 acres, this would be the world's single largest pharma cluster, 28 kilometers south of Hyderabad airport in a place called Mucherla. I have more demand than I have supply today, unfortunately. This is completely focused on manufacturing. We're also going to embed a life sciences university as part of this. Okay. We've already entered into a memorandum of understanding with King's College. We also had a very interesting discussion with Flanders region from Belgium. They have an institute called VIB. We're also in discussions with a couple of other institutes in the US. So this multilateral engagement with research, with academic partnerships, is what is going to create that constant flow of manpower and think force that will, again, continue to keep your pot boiling.
But by when do you expect all of this to be operationalized?
We, in fact, want the Life Sciences University to be up and running by next academic year. So we'll start probably in a makeshift campus and then eventually shift to the pharma city as and when it gets up and running.
You know, one of the aspects that I think deserves attention and focus at this point in time, and I want to understand what the state is doing in terms of regulation and strengthening the state regulator to ensure that as we move from volume to value, there is eye on the ball as far as quality is concerned. And there have been instances in the recent past which have led to a crisis of confidence. What is being done on that front to ensure that quality is not compromised?
Well, I think we have to understand that in today's world, especially where each and every one of the manufacturers here is actually working with some large global majors, I don't think quality is that big a concern anymore, because now they're being benchmarked against global standards. I mean, Like I was mentioning, FDA is here. The regional office is here. FDA has more than 200 plus units here. So when you have to compete, I mean, you have to get global business. You have no choice but to actually elevate your game in terms of quality. So while, of course, the industry is kind of in a self-regulation mode, I think as government, as a government as well, we are doing everything in our capacity. Like I said, the whole $250 billion piece, which looks like a moonshot opportunity now, if it has to be realized, the focus has to be, like I said, on value, on quality, on skill, and ensuring that innovation also happens as part of it. So as government, of course, we enforce standards that are stipulated by Government of India, and simultaneously, again, the industry also is upping its ante in terms of elevating its game to the global standards.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC-TV18 for more news and updates.
Co-powered by IBM. IBM